And that was one of the big changes in Somerville, too. But the biggest was in 1916 after the fire. I will mention how much happened that night. There were 526 houses burned, 138 businesses, churches, and schools. No one was killed. It was amazing. It was a miracle. And so my family was involved. You could ask anybody in here that lives in Augusta. They've got a story about the fire, right? And so we could write a book on the stories of the Augusta fire of 1916. But that was what so many people did not rebuild downtown, but they came up here. And they either built or bought a house on Somerville. So Somerville mushroomed pretty quickly up until 1923 or 4 after the fire. Streetcars were another thing that came into being then. It was a necessity. Streetcar, and the reason why is because when these people were up here in the summertime, the reason why they didn't go back downtown to church is that you not only had dirt roads, but you had 2 plank roads. Walton Way was a plank road, so was Battle Road. Can you imagine? Well, you might get down the street with a horse and buggy, but how are you going to get that horse back up that plank road? You'd probably go a foot and go back 2. So people would stay up here when they got here and go, and that's why Reid Memorial and Good Shepherd all developed in this area. The people needed churches up here for the summertime. So they would take them downtown, and the streetcars would. The streetcars would take people that came here and lived permanently downtown to work, and they would bring back domestic help for the people that were here, living here. So it was used both ways all the time. So a lot of people. I'm going to have to tell you a story about my father. Dad had an automobile pretty early. In fact, he had one before he married in about 1909 or something. And before he got married, I'm sure, one picture Dick has of him is with 3 women in the convertible type, 4-seater, a long car. And he's sitting up there in the driver's seat with his elbow on the car. Anyway, that shows the cars were in Augusta back in those days. But he had a car to go back and forth to work. And when he would go down to work, he would pass it along the streetcar line. And there was a man always waiting to catch that streetcar that Daddy casually knew. He would stop and pick him up. Well, that man would get in the car, never say a word. He would grab the door and handle and hold on to it all the way to town, like he thought Daddy was going to throw him out, I reckon. And Daddy would talk to him. And what I'm telling you is because my brother and sisters, they went to Tubman and Richmond Academy, were in the back seat, and they would listen to all this. Daddy would casually talk to him, and they'd get out of school, and Daddy'd go on downtown. And they asked Daddy one time, said, "Do you ever see anything?" He said, every time he gets out of the car, he says, "Beats walking." So, you'll be walking, that's all you can think of. That's all he ever said. I think Daddy picked him up every day just for that reason, to hear him say, "Beats walking." So, anyway, that's the story of Daddy in the streetcar. One of my favorite homes on the hill is next door, Montrose Court. You all know it as Allen Fuqua Center. But I knew it back when the Wallers lived there. Allen Fuqua grew up here at Reid Memorial and went to William Robinson with Jimmy, Pierce's father. They were in the same class and good friends. And Sunday school class here together, and then they went on to grammar school together. He was a fine young man, and he was killed in an an airplane crash when he was 18 from military. He'd just gone into it. So we lost Allen, a fine young man. And when the Fuquas bought the house next door in 1975, they dedicated it in memory of their son, Allen Fuqua. So anybody that's new in the church, I want them to know that Allen Fuqua's name means a great deal to Reid Memorial. It's not just a name we added to that building over there. Now, my special project that I have here at Reid, and I talked to some of the people, a committee on the session a few years ago, and I said, I want to have an elevator put in Montrose Court, or Allen Fuqua Center. And they looked at me, I said, if you put it in John Schaefer's old kitchen and come down and go out and have a door outside, you'll have a lot more things going on at Reid Memorial, because caterers hated to go over here. Can you imagine carrying a 3 or 5 drive to take up those steps, front or back. And they say, oh, please don't have it Reid Memorial. So if we had that elevator, I think we could pay for the house itself and all these utilities if we had that elevator in the back and opening outside. It certainly would help old folks like me going up and down those steps over there. So that's my project, and anytime anybody dies here, if I leave them a memorial, I leave it to the elevator. So if you hear about the elevator fund, it's because I've donated something to the elevator fund. So, excuse me. But that is my favorite my special project here at Reid Memorial. So my special project. One of the caterers said, not only having trouble carrying a wedding cake up the steps, she said carrying big pans of roast beef and all that stuff, and she said it's terrible. So anyway, I realized then we needed an elevator badly. Going back to the influence of the arsenal on this area, during World War II, it was gas rationing. Any of you that lived through it knows about gas rationing. And the employment at the arsenal tripled or more. And they needed places for people to live. And they needed, and that's why you find in Somerville so many cottages and garage apartments behind the houses. They built them and fixed them because people needed them. And they're still there today, and they're rented out to college students, medical college, or whatever. So that's a good part of that, too. Back in those old days, or earlier days, there was no grocery stores, no Bi-Lo and no Kroger. You had your local grocery stores. And one of our favorites was, we lived on Country Road for a while, when David was young, a baby, in fact, all the way. And Carpenter's grocery store was there, next to Somerville Cemetery. They delivered first, they said, by buggy. Then they would deliver some of it by bicycle, then truck. And they had a beat-up old truck they would deliver 6 days a week, 6 days every week, and they would deliver all day long. The tourists would order from the 3 Carpenter grocery stores, and they would order, and they would just say, well, what do you have in today? Well, we have fresh so-and-so from somewhere. And I remember Mother, when she used to call Harley's, which was a carpenter on Central Avenue, and she said, Miss Harley would say, well, we just got in some fresh chickens from Mr. So-and-so's farm. Mother would send me some chickens, so it was that sort of thing. And they sat by that telephone. Can you imagine your ear had felt sitting by a telephone all day long, hearing women grumble about having to buy groceries. But the servants did the buying for the tourists, and that was a great, great help there. There were 3 fraternity houses on the hill that were part of the medical college. And one of them is still, well, 2 of them are in use. One of them is Benita Manning Long and Jack Long's home. That was the fraternity house. And the other one was on John's Road, and that was, it's now today Mr. Robert Osborne's house. The third one has been torn down. It was on the corner of Troop and Richmond Avenue. And if you know where Bill Turley has his office, that's the grounds that third fraternity house was on. So all of that has something to do with the groceries by local grocery stores, fraternity houses, medical college, and colleges and garage apartments for all the people living in this area here. So all of that had something to do with that period of our tourist era, you might say. We had one full-time airport. Daniel Field was built in 1927, and on the corner of Highland and Riceboro Road. And then during World War II, the Army Air Corps took it over, and it was the first thing to become military other than the arsenal. And after that, we had Camp Gordon, and then we had Bush Field as a training field. So we had all of that with the arsenal here during World War II. Forest Hills Hotel was built in 1927, right before Daniel Field was. And I have some pictures up here that the opening of Daniel Field. And in the background, you can see Forest Hills, Forest Ricker, they called it back then, sticking up above all of the trees. It's no longer here. It was filled with asbestos during World War II by the Army and made into a hospital, Auburn General Hospital. Fortunately, we lost a beautiful, grand hotel, you might say, in the Forest Hills. It was taken down. We had a golf course behind that that's still there and part of the Augusta State University. I'm sorry, whatever it is. Georgia Region University, Augusta, I was in that year. They golf there today. And back in 1930, there was a tournament, the Southeastern Open Championship that Bobby Jones won. And that was the start of his trip, of the road, you might say, to winning the Grand Slam that year. And that was 1930. And it said that Bobby Jones said that while he was playing in that tournament, he got the idea of building a golf course here in Augusta. And that's the birth of, you might say, of the National Golf Course. That leads us not to forget General Eisenhower. Everybody is conscious of him. First time he ever came to Augusta, and I said General, I didn't say President. It was April 14th, 1948. You know what I remember? I gave birth to my first child that night. So I will never forget that day. Kyle was born that night. When our children were in school, in church during the time of President Eisenhower here, I told them, I said, you all look at that. That is the president. And you're seeing history in the making. John Foster Dulles, of whom we have an airport named for in Washington, came to Augusta many times. And every time he had to work out with President Eisenhower, he came. And all of his cabinet at different times came with President Eisenhower. But my favorite visit was one Thanksgiving morning. President Eisenhower came in with General Montgomery from England. Well, I had already heard what President Eisenhower had grumbled and said. I don't know if it was in the paper where somebody told me, but he said, President Eisenhower said, what in the world does he want to see the National Golf Course? He doesn't even play golf. So he was not happy with President Montgomery coming to Augusta. Then he said, and I can't play golf while he's here. So that messed up everything for him. But he came on Thanksgiving morning. So my husband was interested since he had been in the European theater in England, and he was interested in seeing Montgomery. And Montgomery and Eisenhower, you might say, pretty well ran that theater during that time. Excuse me, I have to put down the mic once in a while.
Every 15 minutes.
Well, I'll get it separated in a second. That's another thing about getting old, you fumble. I can't get them separated. Here we are. Okay. That was what my father used to say. When you get old, you start fumbling, and he is right. You start fumbling. So, anyway, during this period of time, Woodlawn Methodist Church was built across the street. The Jewish synagogue was built down the street. Trinity on the hill enlarged, and the Catholic Church enlarged. So, all these churches were growing on the hill, you might say. And Trinity enlarged along that time. When the Arsenal closed in 1955, it became Augusta Junior College. My oldest sister and brother both graduated from junior college. And, well, actually, two sisters and brother, because they all graduated, and then they went on to finish 4-year colleges. But they went to junior college. So when it came up here, it gave a wonderful chance for them to become a 4-year college, and it became Augusta College. Then it changed to Augusta State, and we know today it's Georgia Region University, Augusta. So we have all of that in our area here growing and bringing in so many students from all around the entire area. And thank goodness we had the Arsenal. Look what it has meant to this area and the whole CSRA, because we have students from the entire time. I haven't mentioned Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb lived right up on the street here on William Street. And I think the interesting thing is that the more I study of Ty Cobb, the more things I hear about how good he was, the things he did for Augusta. He did so many things here. I can tell you one little short story about my father. I keep going back to him. But he and Ty Cobb were good friends. He never said anything against Ty Cobb. When in 1919, my father developed TB, tuberculosis, as so many people did. He was not getting well, and the doctors suggested he go up to the Catskill Mountains in New York to a hospital up there for nothing but TB. He went up there and stayed 9 months till he was completely cured. When he was coming back, he knew he'd have a layover in New York, and he called Ty Cobb and said, is there any chance I can get a ticket to the Detroit Tigers and New York Yankees team, a game that's going to be played when I get to New York? He said, just go to the gate. When you get there, you'll have a ticket. Well, my father went and got the ticket, and he went in, Not only did he have a ticket, he sat on the front row on the Detroit side right behind